comply with the law. And how does it comply with the law? That is by serving Section 21. And when you serve Section 21, you can either serve Section 21 before the fixed term expires or when it expires. Sometimes you have the fixed term running out and it becomes periodic. Then you serve a Section 21.1, but before it expires, you serve a Section 21.4a. And I wouldn't worry too much about that because you can always get the forms, the right forms, or seek advice in regards to which forms to be used. I'm just going to go through the main points. For tenancies renewed starting from 1st of October 2015, landlords must use a special form to give you at least 2 months notice in writing, because normally before you can do that yourself, but from 1st of October 2015 you have to actually use a special form in order to serve a Section 21, and I believe that can be available from the court or online through the courts. It doesn't have to be a special form if it's before 1st of October 2015. And also if it's a periodic tenancy, one that runs from month to month, the notice must be issued under the Section 21 of the Housing Act 1988, and this is where most people get it wrong. We've had cases whereby the landlord goes to the court, they can't understand why the case was thrown out. These are little mistakes that can cost you more months of non-rent paid, because where you need to cite Section 21 of the Housing Act 1988 if you're serving it after the fixed term. Then also some landlords often apply for section without. Then also there are reasons where you can serve a Section 21, or whereby your Section 21 cannot be valid if you haven't done the following things, like protecting the deposit, which I mentioned earlier. You need to inform your tenants of which one of the schemes you have protected the deposit. So if you have a situation whereby you want to seek for possession and you haven't protected the deposit, it will be invalid. You won't be able to seek for possession. And also, okay, then also cases, just like my husband said earlier about the tenancy agreements, where you have, just like I'm Stephanie Okafo, and I have an agent sign saying John Samuel Estate rather than Stephanie Okafo. If that happens, you won't be able to serve the Section 21. That gets thrown out by the courts. So those are things you need to watch out for as well. And also the licenses we spoke about earlier, you need to have that in place. For instance, if you need a selective license, you don't have that on your property, and you want to serve a section, or you serve a Section 21, it becomes invalid as well. Or you have an HMO property and you haven't got the license, it gets thrown out as well. You won't be able to serve a Section 21. Those are the hindrances from serving Section 21. Then how to service your home. 1st of October 2015, landlords are required to provide a tenant with how to rent book. They started 1st of October 2015. If you haven't done so, please can you provide your tenants with a how to rent book, the gas safety, which we spoke earlier, within 28 days, and the energy performance certificate. These 3 needs to be given to your tenants once they move in. Also, if you have not given the tenant the rent checklist, the EPC, which we just spoke about, then also the checklist when you want to serve a Section 21, sign copies of the assured short-hold tenancy. That means all the tenancy agreement with you needs to have been signed by the landlord and by the tenants. You need to have that with you. Copies of all the notices you served your tenants. You should have evidence of that. Full legislative statements, which can be the rent the tenant has paid. If you have a tenant that is in arrears, you can also have all the statements, the amount of money. That is what that is for. Then your claim forms, which I believe you would have downloaded or picked up at the courts. You need to have that and your certificate of service. Without all this, the longer you get delayed. For instance, if you're already a couple of months behind in your mortgage and you send half of the documents, you just need to have all the copies of all the documents in order to have the case going. Sometimes people just send letters by recorded. When I spoke to a client last week which was going through this section 21, I told her to go to the courts herself because that is safe. You go there, you meet someone, the sign, you get the person's name. To me, I believe it's better because in the post it can get lost or things like that. So if you have to travel or you have to go there, then. But if you can't, then you can always post it. And I'm more stressed. People believe that when they want to serve a section 21, their agents can go on their behalf. No. The agent needs to apply for rights of audience. The agency can act on your behalf, but you need, as a landlord, to be there. But you can have a solicitor represent you as a landlord without you being there. But when it comes to an agent, you have to be with the agent, because if the agent goes there without you, nothing is going to happen. So I must stress that as well. Then Section 8, this is an alternative way of seeking possession, and sometimes it can either be with rent arrears or damage to the property. There are about 17 grounds you can use in requesting for possession under Section 8, but we won't be able to do that. But I will just go through the most common reason for serving a Section 8, which is the rent arrears, when your tenants are in arrears and it wasn't allowed into the property. So those are things that you need to be very, very careful about when it comes to. So how do you go about it? With an official demand, but a polite letter. You need to be careful of the choice of words. Not saying, if you don't give me my money today, I'm just going to come there and do this. That's not allowed. You can demand for your rents in a better way, or should I say in a better manner. Then after that, you can start that once the tenant is in 1 month in arrears. You can issue a letter after 14 days. Then after you've done that and there's no response from your tenants, the next 7 days, which makes it 21 days, you can write a letter again asking them, is there any way we can solve this? Is there any arrangement, or however you want to go about it? If there's no response, 7 days after, that makes it 28 days, which makes it 2 months. With 2 months, then you can go to the court. But if it's less than 2 months, you can't. So that's something I'd like you to remember. You have to, the tenant needs to have had 2 months in arrears before you can seek for possession under Section 8. So I hope that's clear enough. Which is the final topic, the matchmaker, which is the estate agents, because I believe I'm not sure if some other agents agree with me, but I believe we can actually make or break the relationship between a landlord and a tenant. Because sometimes you have landlords that are interested in profit. So when you have landlords that are interested in profit, they're not worried about who you put in their property, as long as the money is coming in. Some are looking more as long-term capital. Those are people that you would imagine would want a family looking after their property, and that is where the estate agent comes in. When you want to choose your estate agent, I believe your estate agent needs to know better than you. It shouldn't be the other way around, because that's why their expertise, isn't it? They need to actually know better than yourself. Are they qualified? I'm sure for an agent that's qualified, they'll be happy to display that in their office if they're qualified. And if they haven't done so, we have some agents that are licensed with HALA. It's now called HALA Property Map. And in order for you to become a licensed agent, you need to have got your qualifications in order. You start from the level 3 to level 5. Those are things you need to look out for in choosing your estate agents. And also, are they members of the property ombudsman? That is very important, because when there's a complaint, there is the body you report them to as a tenant or as a landlord. They need to have that displayed. All estate agents and letting agents, it is mandatory for them to have it. So if your agents, that's a decision for you to make, but an agent or an estate agent or letting agents, they need to be members of the property ombudsman. Then also, do they have clients money protection? That's not mandatory yet till next year, but if you are members of the HALA Property Map, you need to have that in place. And what is clients money protection? I'm sure you're wondering. That is to protect the money, your money, because when the tenant pays, it becomes the landlord's. So when you have the client's money protection in place, that covers you. For instance, I've had stories where tenants have paid money, and I think the next couple of days or next couple of weeks, they've been there and they can't find the estate or the lettings agents. But when they have clients' money protections, that's another way to that's another way to help you, whereby your money doesn't go busted with the estate agent. So that is all I believe for the matchmaker. Which brings us to the end of the workshop. I'm just going to recap again from the beginning, because I believe knowledge becomes powerful when it's acted upon. And I believe the more you learn about certain things, you get used to it. Just like Nelson Mandela said, it seems impossible until it's done. And I believe, like I said, the reason why we're here today is to be fully informed, to have a better understanding of the landlord and tenants law, and which is my desire. So we're just going to go through it again. We went through the tenancy agreements, right to rent immigration check, landlord's rights and responsibilities, tenants' rights and responsibilities, Section 21, Section 8, choosing the right agents. Like I said earlier, there are about 150 of them, but because of time, it's unfortunate that I can go over 150. But I believe I've gone through matters that I believe I get repeated complaints about, repeated emails, repeated questions, and that is why I have prioritized that today. And I'm just going to end before I invite my husband back on the stage. I want you all to raise your hands if you're committed to making things right. Thank you. And that ends the workshop for today. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, the residential property consultant. That's what I have to call her. So it's not mommy this and mommy that. That's our official title, and she takes it home with her. Okay, my activity. Who has an answer for me? Can I recap the story? It was a young lady that ran a bath for herself, got a phone call from a lost long friend of 15 years. She spent hours and hours talking to that friend on the phone, forgot about the bath. She damaged the downstairs neighbor's ceiling, damaged the bathroom, and she rang the landlord for repairs. So should the landlord repair it or not?
No.
Why? Exactly. So it's the landlord's. Sorry.
I have a point to make here. You know the truth, but us as the council, we don't. So when the tenant complains to the council to say, I have a leak in my bathroom, I go and inspect the property and I say, Mr. Landlord, you have a leak in your property, fix it. Because the tenants do lie.
Exactly. Well, we can only go by what the law says. Okay, so when it becomes you say, I say, and you say, it becomes a civil matter, and the civil needs to handle that. But the law says any damage that's caused by the tenant, deliberately or accidentally, but if the damage is caused by the tenant, it's the tenant's responsibility to fix it. That is the law. You know, so, but if they lie and stuff, yes, the consultant wants to talk.
Sorry, can I just add to that? I know there's some cases where wear and tear is allowed. That is, if it's wear and tear, then that becomes the landlord's responsibility. I don't want us to confuse that with what we're saying. So it's different. So I just thought to mention that. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I got it wrong slide up. Okay, so like she said, there are 150 legislations, and we only have 2 hours to rush through this. But the consultant here has written a wonderful fast-selling book called Landlords and Tenants Fall Out of Love. It tells you a lot more about the things we didn't cover today, the HMO, and other legislations which we didn't cover today. It's on sale today for a special price of £10, and she has promised for everybody that gets it today, she will personally autograph that as well. Okay, so who is John Samuel Estate? So just like she said, so John Samuel Estate was born in 2014, and we have a lot of things we do. We are a letting company, and we do sales as well. We offer mortgages, and we also do property acquisition. Now, property acquisition is for anyone that wants to do a buy-to-let property. So we, as an estate agent, will source the property for you. We will do any refurbishments that that's involved with, get it up to scratch, and we'll also tenant it and manage the property for you. So this is one of the things we do in John Samuel Estates, and it's we also run workshops. We offer 2 kinds of workshops. We do a one-to-one, so workshop, so you can come and sit down with us one-to-one, and we find out what best suits you and what you want to invest in. Or we normally will do every other month a workshop for a group of people on property acquisition. Also, we do, because like we said, we are a one-stop shop, so once you come into John Samuels, you don't need to go anywhere. We believe that once you are an investor or a landlord, you need to put all your things in place. So we also offer will writing. So, this is one aspect that we as a community don't want to hear about. So every time I do say will writing, the first thing I hear is, God forbid. But one thing I always make them understand that Jesus Christ himself died at the age of 33. Okay? So regardless of, everybody has a time to do it. Jesus died at the age of 33. So why didn't he live to 100? So get your house in order, put your wills in place, and, get yourself secure. It just makes financial sense that you do that. So once again, we would like to thank you very, very much for your time. And now we will take 1 or 2 questions. We need to be here by 8:30, but so we need to clear out everything. So if you do have any questions, please ask.
Okay. Do I press this
Yeah.
button? Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm a landlord, and most of my properties that I lease out the rooms. Okay, and I also lease out the properties with bills, so I pay all the bills all the way through. So it's a turnkey fee for them, and it works for me too. Now, when it comes to the deposit, am I required as a landlord to actually put the deposit for each of the rooms, for each of the separate tenants, into the deposit scheme?
Yes, you have to, from 6th of April 2007. Yes, you have to.
Right.
You have to protect every tenant's deposit.
Okay. Thank you. Second question, taking into consideration that I lease the rooms out with the bills, okay, and given the importance of the energy certificate,
Yes.
okay, as I'm paying all the bills and they're paying the rent, including the bills,
Okay.
why would I have to, or do I still have to give them an energy certificate, bearing in mind they're not paying the bills?
It's a requirement. You need to provide your tenants with that. It's nothing to do with either they're paying or they're not paying. It's a statutory regulation that you have to comply with as a landlord.
Okay.
And then again, you would not be able to chase any of those tenants out of the property by using Section 21 if you don't have that.
Exactly. I've written that down, so thank you very much. Third question. I have an apartment that has a parapet gutter over the top of it.
Okay.
And the rain, when it rains very hard, drops into the parapet gutter. Okay. But when the builder built the property, or when it was restored, there's only one downpipe. Okay. And in the apartment above me, or above this apartment, because I'm not living there, a rubbish sack was left on the parapet gutter. The rain then poured, and the bag then slipped across and sat on top of the downpipe. The parapet gutter, which is about this wide and that deep, filled for the water, and as the storm continued, the water has come through my apartment, the apartment I own, and it's gone through about 4 other apartments, or maybe 6 other apartments in the building. We know the identity of the tenant that's done it, and we know the owner of the property too. Is that tenant, or is the owner of the property who allowed the tenant to be in there, responsible for the damage based on... It's a difficult question, I know. Thank you for asking.
It's the tenant's responsibility. If you remember, we mentioned, we covered this earlier, that if you damaged a landlord's property, you are liable. But in regards to that, you need to actually have evidence, not just because you all know it was caused by so tenant or landlord. You need to back it up with evidence, but the tenant becomes liable as long as the landlord can prove it's the tenant.
Sorry, I think on that note, it would be the responsibility of the freeholder, not the tenant, because the damage wasn't created directly by the tenant. There were external factors that caused that damage, so it becomes the freeholder's responsibility, not the tenant.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but the reason why I have said the tenant is because the pack of rubbish was left. As I say, there was a pack of rubbish left which should have been taken away. So that was also caused by the landlord's builders. Sorry? It was caused by the landlord's builders, so it becomes the landlord's responsibility. If there was no rubbish, then we can say it's natural cause or whatever the case must have been. But because they have left the whole pack of rubbish which should have been taken, then they become liable. I hope that's...
The landlord becomes liable, not
No,
the tenant?
the tenant, the person who left the rubbish. But like I said, it is your word against... If the tenants can say, oh, I didn't leave it, as long as they have evidence, because everything needs to be... you need to have evidence for everything. So if the landlord believes it's the tenant that left this, or the tenant believes, oh, it's the builders or whatever, they need to have evidence. Because I think at the end of the day, this will become a civil matter.
All right, just to clarify, coming from the council's point of view, when we come across cases like this, we don't get involved with the tenant, we go straight for the landlord, because we look at it in terms of management. If you, say for those who have license in renting properties and have license, one of the contract there states that you must inspect your properties quarterly, you must manage the property to a reasonable standard. So if you are not able to identify that debt in that property that has caused subsequent issues, then the question we ask you, the landlord, is how do you manage that property? And so do you do your regular checks? Because if you do your regular checks, you will be informing your tenant you need to clear that rubbish away. And if she fails to clear the rubbish away, you need to take action against that tenant. But when the council comes in, we are not getting to the civil dispute. We are looking at it from a criminal point of view.
Exactly, just like what I said earlier, that because sometimes you have landlords, their properties are currently with a lettings agent or estate agent, so they believe they should conduct all the checks. But like I said, it is also your investment, and at the end of the day, with the powers the council have, you can become liable. So you have to be on top of things. But like I said, I believe it might become a civil matter. Thank you.
Sorry, just still on that point, the other properties that were also damaged, who's going to take care of them? Is it going to be the first landlord or the owners of those properties?
Well, I would leave that for the judge, but in my opinion, unfortunately, someone has to be the scapegoat, isn't it? And it all started with the tenants above your flat So in my opinion, I believe it will be the tenant above. But like I said, we leave that to the judge to make a decision.
I think just to answer that, a lot of people try and rely on the insurance company.
I was going to say that that's the best thing to do.
That's the best thing to do. Got to rely on.
Yeah, that's when it comes in when you have, but at the end of the day, to still be the insurance for the person that is the.
Sorry, just to clarify one thing. If it's a block of flats, for example, you've got 3 flats, and that issue that started from the first flat has gone right down, the freeholder, the managing company of that block of flats become responsible. Now they will have to resolve the issue and then take civil matter against whoever they believe started the problem. But because we are here as local authority, when we get involved with something like that, we will serve a notice on the freeholder of those block of flats.
Exactly.
Not on individual leaseholders. It will go to the managing company of the block of flats. And what we are saying to you is we need to address that issue. If you want to take civil matter between the tenant on the first flat, that is between the freeholder and the tenant on the first floor flat.
But it also depends on the type of flat. If it's a block of flat, like you said, yes, that's absolutely fine. But sometimes you have a situation whereby a 5-bedroom house has been converted to a 3-bed and a 2-bed, so it's just between both parties. But if it's a block of flat, then you're right.
I'm going on something here. Tenancy agreements. Can the landlord drop a tenancy agreement, or does it have to always go for an agent or third party?
It depends. If you got the tenants yourself, then I would imagine both parties would sign the agreements. Well, I always believe you should seek an advice before doing that, because for a typical normal contract, I don't think it's less than 6 or 7 pages. So I'm not sure how a landlord can draw that up, because you would have all the rights and responsibilities, the rent review, everything. So I would believe that you seek legal advice to help you so that you know you set the right tenancy. Yeah.
But just like Stephanie said, you may want to
Seek.
Not every agreement fits.
There's a lot of things are hidden in the break
Yeah.
clauses.
Yeah.
A lot of clauses are missing in a tenancy agreement, and once, as you're saying, once the tenant or the landlord doesn't sign for something, it doesn't exist.
Exactly.
Unless it's written down, it doesn't exist. And we always advise that if you're a new landlord or you're not quite sure what you do or how to go about it, you don't have to be employed the services of your agent full term, but you can have them as introductory agents to your tenants. So they do your paperwork, they do the checks for you, they do the EPCs, the registers, and they give you a bundle for you, ready-made with your authorization to do that. That's one way to go about it, because the clause is very, very, the tenancy agreement that you sign is the Bible for that property.
Exactly.
You know, if you're not signing it, it's not written down in that tenancy agreement, you have nothing to fall back on. It's very important, just like Stephanie said, a tenancy agreement should be at least 6 to 12 pages.
Exactly.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to ask, who pays the agency fee? The tenant or the landlord, or both of them?
It depends on what you mean by agency fee. Do you mean for introducing the tenant? It depends on, I'm not sure what you mean by the agency fee.
Well, when the tenant is taken in by through an agent into a property,
Yes.
most agents will charge the tenant a fee from putting them in, and then they charge the landlord again.
Yes, and which is something that I'm sure the council knows about, the tenants fee ban, which might take place next, which might take place sometime next year. Tenants won't be allowed to pay agents for application fee, or the reference fee. But at the moment, as it stands, the tenants will pay the application fee and also for the references, and the landlords would pay for the agents introducing the tenants.
I think
So the agent takes 2 months' salary.
Exactly.
You have the vast availability of the internet.
Yes.
There are agents that charge and there are agents that don't charge. You as an adult, you make a decision what sort of services you want to be provided by that particular agent. And some agents don't take any fees from
But
the
many tenants don't know that.
Exactly, and that is where knowledge becomes powerful. Lack of knowledge can actually cost you, which is what we've been talking about from the beginning of the workshop. So it's up to you to choose. Just like when I talked about what you need to consider in your estate agent, some landlords can tell you, I don't care. All the things I've mentioned, they don't care if they have clients money protection, they're part of it too. It depends on the agreements between the estate agent and the landlord. That's how you would.
So is that,
Yeah.
as we said before, what is stated in the agreement?
Exactly.
Was it full management or was it part management? If it's not clear, then the tenant can turn around and sue you.
Exactly. Okay.
Selective licenses.
Yes.
Are they local though?
No, backing and diagonal.
It's barking on that, but it's now going to
Almost all the councils.
Almost all the councils are adopting the same policy.
Yes.
So I guess in the next 2 years,
All the local. Even Newham, they have that already.
So we
They're
have
all
Newham, Redbridge,
Hatfield.
They had it before back in the day.
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So there's Croydon as well, sort of.
And they're all, I'm sure you know, they'll all join before you know it, and everybody needs to have that.
But at the moment it's still locally legislated rather than...
Yes, and it depends on the council. Not all councils are adopted now, so you need to check if
So I think one of the criteria for licensing, they're looking at the highest area of
antisocial.
So if you have a very quiet local authority that has very little issue of ASD,
They
no
might not.
need to do licensing. And when you have a lot of housing in multiple occupation, they will have licensing scheme as well.
Exactly. Is anyone? Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
No.
Okay. I have an apartment which there's 3 parking spaces underneath the apartment.
Okay.
And someone has parked or dumped the car underneath the area that belongs to me, and it's blocking a door which allows me to A, read the meters, and B, turn the gas off. Okay. Difficult question, but I actually wrote to Tower Hamlets Council and asked them to assist me to firstly find out who owned the car, and secondly, can you organise to get rid of it? Because it's a risk, and it's covered in dust. It's been there for about 9 months, and no one can assist me in this area. There's gas certificates, there's fire certificates, there's this certificate and that certificate for safety, etc. But the fact is that car is blocking the door for me to turn the gas off. Now, if there was a fire in that apartment, or in that, it's more or less a house, a bit like a townhouse, I can't get access to that door to turn the gas off. The only way you can get access is to drag the car out, and there's no one who will be able to do that unless it's a fire brigade. Now, the Tower Hamlets Council, forgive me for asking this question, they said, sorry, it's down to you, we can't help you. Okay?
Is this a private parking
It's a
or
private
highways?
park. It's a private park.
So you need to contact highways or street.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Yeah.
Highways deals with street owner, private parking. DVLA?
Yes, someone did say contact DVLA.
DVLA.
Because that must have been sworn or
You must
something.
forgive the council will not share such information with the Data Protection Act, you know. They will never tell you who owns a property. I think that has a point. You have to do your thing on DVLA and ask them to remove abandoned vehicles. Check if they're sold, check if they're registered, has insurance. They come in and remove it.
Oh, right, okay, so I'll contact them.
Yeah. Would you agree with me?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's fine.
To the question, I just asked, under the HMO rule, how many rooms would require 2 toilets?
How many people are in the house?
Yeah.
How many people are in the house?
No, I'm just asking.
Yeah, that's how she can answer.
Yeah, because we cannot answer that depending on
We don't tell
But is
them.
how many people know how many rooms?
Yes.
No, how many people?
How many people?
Okay.
Because you can have 2 rooms, but you will not have 6, 8 people living in 2 rooms. That's just an example. So,
Okay, but
yeah.
if it's 5 rooms, single people in 5 rooms. So that's 5 people.
Yeah. One kitchen, 1 toilet, 5 people.
That's good.
Yeah, and again, it depends on the layout, the way the house
Yeah.
is designed.
And,
That's a general answer.
Can I just add to that? And also it depends on the council as well, because I know another council where we have students let the property, you need to have at least 2 baths
Yeah.
and at least 3 sinks in the house, and there are 5 students. So I don't know, maybe London Borough back in the day might be flexible with that, but with some other councils, you need to have at least 2 toilets and bath and have about 3 or 4 sinks in the house on every floor.
We're
Which
talking
is-
very vaguely here. Are we talking about bedsit or are we talking about an HMO?
No, she's talking about HMO.
Yes,
Yeah, that's the question.
HMO is defined in so many ways. Like when you ask that question, it's quite broad. You have mandatory HMO, you have additional. You have an HMO that has just 3 people living in it. You have 5 rooms that will have maybe 10 people because it's double bedrooms. In that scenario, it will change. Again, we cannot give you an answer until we see the layout of the property and we know you give an indication of how many people will live in there. Because once you have 5 bedrooms with 10 people, it changes. 1 bedroom will not be enough for 10 people, 1 kitchen will not be enough for 10 people. So it will have to change. Then you have to go through planning to get additional requirements.